G'day guys, welcome back to Supercoach with DR and welcome to the Round 19 stock market video. Hope you've had a cracking week so far. Now firstly, apologies for the very late upload. It's currently 2:30 AM and I haven't even started this yet. I do apologise, I've just been super busy with school. And look, for some of us, the stockies aren't really relevant these days because we've run out of trades. Hey, you still might want to watch it just to get some Supercoach info. But for those lucky people, or maybe smart people that have kept some trades up the sleeve, then you're still looking to potentially make some moves this week. Now, I am doing things a little bit differently. We're going to start off by looking at the players that will be missing in action. I'll give my take on whether or not I think you either hold these players or just look to trade them out. Then we'll get a little bit more positive. Take a look at the players that are actually returning to action, the players that are available this week. We'll take a look at some of the blokes that are on fire, some of the best 3-round averages from their lines. We'll then take a look at some of the pod selections. I've got a few again from different lines, and then we'll finish off with some DPP value options, all under 150k. So switching things up, just trying to keep it a little bit more relevant. And before we actually get into it, just a bit of housekeeping. If you're a fan or if you watch or listen to the Supercoach Swordplay podcast that I do with the two legends, Spills and Janeth, we're looking to do a community appreciation podcast next week, and we'd love to have some of you guys on. So if you are interested in joining us, just for a bit of a chat about how your season's gone, just to get to know you, introduce yourself to the community, and hopefully have some fun and banter, then let me know down there in the comments section, or else please send me a DM through Twitter. So that's it for the housekeeping, guys. Hope all is well. I know it's a little bit negative, but what we're going to do is we're going to start by looking at the players that are unfortunately missing in action this week. Hope you enjoy, guys. Now, I know it's never nice to start off with the negatives, but let's just get this stuff out of the way. Let's look at the players that are missing in action. You can see Cause's reaction up the top there. Not a happy man this week with the carnage. Shout out to you, legend. Absolute ripper of a bloke. But look, we'll start up the top. Dylan Williams, the man that got away, defensive forward, 393,600. Phenomenal season to date. Unfortunately for him and for owners, he's been omitted this week. I suppose better than getting injured. O'Donnell, he'll be out with concussion protocols. Cheaper type player, but for some of us, we're looking for him to cover this week. Malikan, a much more popular bench option. Unfortunately, he's going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks with a hammy. So, given that fact, I think is a sell. Remember, there's only 6 weeks left in the season. He'll be out for half of that. I think you got to move him on if you can. Chera, for me, is a hold. Over 600k. That break even is pretty high. The 3-rounder has gone down, but again, a super season to date. I think you'll hit back. Bit of hamstring tightness, bit of a rest against the Eagles. I think you'll be fine for next week. Rory Laird, this one really hurts me as an owner. Bit of an AC joint issue. I don't think it's too serious. I don't think that the Crows really want to risk him this week, send him down to Melbourne, get banged up with blokes like Viney running through there like an absolute freight train. So, remember last week, after he actually hurt his shoulder, would have obviously got jabbed, but came on in the last quarter, 50 plus points in that quarter. So, it mustn't have been overly serious, probably just a bit of a sore boy at the moment. Give the bloke the week off. Hopefully he can hit back hard for the last 5 weeks of the season. Tom Green, I think, is an absolute trade. I said he was a definite trade last week. 2 weeks away with that hammy. I still think he's a sell now, if you can. Hasn't really been setting the world on fire anyway. Cripper, not really worried about him. Think he's just getting rested up after getting banged up this season. Seems like he's always carrying something, doesn't he, Cripper? But I'm not too concerned. Expect him to return next week. Shrek, now this is very concerning. This is a quote. Hopefully he'll return this season. I've got no idea what the timeline or the time frame on this injury is. So, given the fact he's a ruckman, we've basically got no cover. Look, some of us have decam. Maybe a very small percentage have jumped on a soldo for a short period of time while Nank's out. That you could switch in there for a week or two. But if not, I think it's pretty simple. You've got to move him on. For many owners, if you don't, you're looking at a Krispy Kreme there. This is super unfortunate. This bloke was setting the world on fire. Super surprising for me this year. And I tell you what, in 2024, I'm going to highly consider him if he's got DPP status and you can select him up forward. It's Angus Sheldrick, 346,800, almost made it to 350k, and if you haven't played another game, he certainly would have reached that mark there with that low break even. Unfortunately, he has had season-ending ankle surgery, gone for the remainder. So if you've got him on your bench with no trades, yeah, I really feel sorry for you because he was looking fantastic, but you've just got a dead player there now, which is no good. 2 more to go. Dev Robinson, omitted, was a sub last week. Look, could be the sub again this week, but not looking good for cover. Damn, exactly when we need him as well. And Georgie Wardlaw, unfortunate for him, a fantastic young player, and very unfortunate for owners because, again, another popular cover type pick, almost hit 300k. Sell, though, is going to be out for 3 to 4. Alrighty, on to the good news now. Let's take a look at the players that are back in business this week. We can see my man Spilsy up the top there. Absolutely wrapped that the Seagull is back. 468,100. A big break even, but I'm not looking to trade him out. He's my 23rd man. You can see in the notes section there, big shout out to my man AFL Doodles. Give him a follow on Twitter. That's his illustration of Nank the Tank, and he is taking out the Seagull. You dirty dog, Nank. Enjoy your suspension. But great to have the Seagull back for owners. Hayden Young, bit of a pod. Won't affect a heap of players here, but he's back. Break even of 65. Probably looking to go up, get close to 500k soon. Seamus Mitchell, a much more popular player. I know that the legend that is Janeth Fernando has him as his 23rd man, covering his defence, covering his forward line, was managed, inverted commas, last week. So great to have him back. He's going to save some donuts. Talk about a man rising from the dead. Lockie Cowan's back, if you don't mind. Now, in the notes section, all I've got there is the slow burn. Here's the definition of a slow burn. Why is he back? How is he back? I'm not too sure. But for blokes like Abs, who's actually held on to this bloke, what a godsend it is because he's been eating donuts lately. Great for him. Caleb the Schlong, as Brent would say, Sarong. Great to have this man back for myself, personally. I tell you what, that suspension, pretty weak, maybe owner's bias, but I expect him to come back and have a really, really powerful last 6 weeks. I think it may have even been, maybe good for him just to have a week off, rest up his body, rest up that ankle, because he did have some concerns there. So I'm hoping he can go absolutely bang this week. Chad Warner had about a month off, 550k. Now, selecting him, I think, is a bit of a risk, particularly coming off injury. I'd much rather pay up, if you can, 15, 16k for a Sarong. Fantastic player, though, Warner. DC is back in business this week. He's training strongly. He has been named. So, for owners like me, or ex-owners now like me that got rid of him, I'm sort of concerned not having that cover, but at the same time, when you get carted off in a golf cart, I was looking at a donut. I needed just to move him on. But the great thing you can see in the notes section there is his DPP. If you're a Briggs owner, he's looking tired, not overly confident on Big Briggsy at the moment. So he may be someone that you can use for cover, even if you go Shrek, for example. Josh Dunkley, the man is back. I am wrapped as a Lions owner, but very, very scared as a Supercoach non-owner. He's not going to be a fun anti-pod to have. How's he going to come back after that calf? I'm not too sure. Will he be a little bit rusty, work his way into the game? Potentially, but we know he's such a professional. I'll just expect him to continue where he left off from the big dunks. And Baslenka down the bottom there. Look, he's probably a pass for me. Just has not been in great form. I don't think he's in a great mental headspace at the moment either. So, given that fact, even though he's cheap, I just wouldn't look to go there. If you are desperate, there's no one else around, you've got 420k, then maybe you go for it in that scenario. Now let's take a look at some of the blokes that have been on fire. We've got some defenders and some midfielders here. On the next slide, we'll take a look at some rucks as well as some forwards. Now, you can't really separate these two blokes, can you? An identical 3-round average, almost an identical projected rise. Nick Dacos and Dan Houston have been playing out of their skin. Look, Dacos in particular, the Brownlow medal favourite, just really has not let us down this year. And Houston, that pod type selection, won a game the other week. Bad luck, Spills. Sorry, mate. I just had to mention that again, just to rub it in a little bit there, mate. But if you're a Houston owner, wouldn't you just be loving life at the moment? So you can see the notes there. Dacos, the absolute Uber. Dan Houston, the pod on fire. Stewart there, the safe as houses pick. Nice 3-round average of 125. And Luke Ryan as well, 122. I've just got the rock there. He's been pretty rock solid this year, hasn't he? Apart from a 3-week stretch where he was averaging around 85 from memory, he's just been super consistent. So with a few options out like Young last week, we didn't know how that would affect him as well as Cox, but he still managed to turn up. Really good selection, I think, Luke Ryan. This bloke is a super pod, and Maxi's favourite player, Huey McCluggage, the Clug, 577,100. Really healthy 3-rounder there of 126. The concern for me is the fact that this man in the notes section, Josh Dunkley, is back this week. Consistency has never been a real strong point of Clug's Supercoach game. Hey, had a really nice last month, but he's the type of player that can throw a stinker in here and there. So we're not getting a huge bargain here. What he's getting close to 600k. Form certainly warrants that, but he isn't a player I'd be spending up that much on. Absolutely do love the bloke though. Zeret at 667, so I suppose with someone like a Zeret, you are paying almost 100k more. 90k isn't it, almost to be exact, but 3-rounder is actually 2 behind the Clug there. Massive break even with 176, but remember, he did get tagged out of the game in his 200th last week. Players like Atkins, O'Connor, just giving him hell, so I wouldn't worry too much about that because he is playing the Dogs this week who won't tag him. So I'd probably prefer to go with Dog as a VC, but if for some reason you don't own any of the Dogs, then I think Merritt could be fine. The man below him, the King Dog himself, the Bont, I think will be a great VC option this week. Shout out as well to Damo and Clarkey from the Jock Reynolds crew. I did a little bit of an audio segment there, answered a few questions on the last Mailbag podcast of the year, so please make sure you check that out and support those legends on Jock Reynolds. But I said that he was my best starting pick for the year. That was one of the questions, and I just could not go past this bloke. Only gone below the ton once. Great captaincy scores. You just know what you're going to get each week from Bont, and that is a super performance. And down the bottom, we have Josh Dacos. Now, I must admit, this bloke has really flown under the radar for most people. Apart from my man Brent, he's been all over Joshy Dacos like a blanket. He said, look, all the attention is on the bloke at the top of the list there, his brother Nick. But don't you worry about Josh, mate. He is a really decent Supercoach selection at a decent price. You can see that the break-even is only 66. I've been super impressed with Joshy Dacos. Are you brave enough to go there? Well, if you own Tom Green and you need to go someone at a cheaper price, then maybe he could be someone you look at. On to some forwards and rucks on fire. The 2 rucks at the top, English and Gawn, they're simply on another level. We all know what English did last week with his 170 plus, and we know what Gawn did last week with his 200 plus. I was shattered because originally I really wanted to trade Gawn to English, but when news came through that Grundy wouldn't be playing, it was a pretty obvious hold for me, and wrap that I did. Now, a little bit of talk this week, whether or not you think it's worth going from someone like a Briggs up to a Gawn. If you've got trades in the bank, I think it absolutely is, because without Grundy, he is, in my opinion, the number 1 ruck in the competition. Briggsy is looking a little bit tired at the moment, slowing up slightly just from the eye test. So if you can make that move, I really advocate that you do. So either one of these blokes are going to be great picks, I think. But if you've got a gut feel that Grundy comes back sooner rather than later, then you may want to avoid it. But short term, with Grundy out of the side, well, the sky's the limit for Maxi Gawn. Rob, a super pod. When I say super, I'm not saying great, but no one owns him. But he was 3rd on the list for those 3-round averages, 113, break even of 131. But a pass for me coming up against Big Maxi this week. And we got 4 forwards. Errol will be no surprise. Very highly owned player. 3-rounder of 128. Huge standout when we look at the other forward options here. We've got Rosie, just that safe as houses type pick. Just really can't go wrong with him. And then we've got a couple of surprise packets here. Sam Flanders, the bloke that I started with, the bloke that I had to trade very, very early on. Why couldn't he have done this to start off the season? I tell you what, I could have had a different year. But 113 for a 3-round average. Just phenomenal. 427,300. Finally getting midfield time. Drew's gone. King's in. He did get a pretty decent role for the last couple of weeks of Drew's tenure, but too little, too late. They want to retain Sam Flanders, and with Drew at the helm, it simply wasn't going to happen. So with a projected score of 91, he's going up another 30k. Sam Flanders should be at over 450 by the end of this week. And Dusty, 473,600, a 3-rounder of 112, a break-even of 22. I've got the Mr. Burns symbol there, the old man symbol, but no disrespect, and I'd never disrespect a man like Dusty, let's be honest, but I do have the thumbs up symbol there, meaning that he is going very, very well for an older man. So, could you go there? You could, I suppose. Would I? No, I wouldn't. I would probably even look at that Flanders selection. Took is getting a bit more midfield time, but I think they want to retain him, as I mentioned before, and they'll continue to give him a pretty friendly role in the seniors. Now let's take a look at some pods between the 250 to 550k range. At the top, we've got Tommy Atkins, 111, 120, and 117 in the last 3. What you'll see here is absolute consistency. So the last 3 weeks, all scores between 110 and 120, and his CBA percentage, 65, 65, 66. A really nice role at the moment, spending enough time in there. Often will play a defensive role, but can get lots of points through tackles. Obviously a contested type player. If you're looking for a pod and you haven't got 500k, he's playing really well at the moment. Even more of a pod is Kane Farrell. Both, again, have defensive mid status, 462,000 with Farrell, so you are saving 20k there, but the 3-rounder is only 107. His last 3, 131, 86, and 103. With Dylan Williams out, maybe some potential for some more kick-ins. We know he's got a lovely left peg. It's just like a golf chip, isn't it? Boom. Lovely, lovely, lovely. I couldn't go there myself, but again, we're looking at pod selections here. If you haven't got the cash to go someone really big, really decent, then maybe take a look at Mr. Farrell. Jack Viney, 127.86, 113 in the last 3. Look, we track up forward. He'll be the main man in the middle. We know he's an absolute beast. There's no Clary there. So with no Clary and no track, Viney could be a pretty decent shout. Coming up against Adelaide this week, who knows? Well, I've got the rock solid symbol there because I just think that he's hard as a rock, a real contested type player, and could really step up because Melbourne really want to retain that top 4 spot. And without some of these other big guns there, he's got to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Now, Jelly, I've got the tag symbol there. He was absolutely tagged out for a 23 by Finn, but the other 3 scores in last month, apart from that, 164.93 and 114, with Tom Green out, he may look to have a bit more responsibility right there in the middle rather than on a wing. So I'm never a fan of a Josh Kelly selection, just mainly due to his durability, not his talent, but more that injury risk. But if you think he can get through for the next 6 weeks, then I think he's a pretty decent shout. Took 92 and a 101 on return. That 92 only had 17% CBA. A little bit worried. We're thinking, geez, is he going to be a permanent forward? What's going to happen? But no, last week, 64% CBA rate. So that gives me a lot more confidence with the pick. At 518,000, he's an absolute bargain for potential. In the notes section there, we've got the trademark symbol. That's our nickname on the channel for Touk Miller because he is just the trademark for an AFL player. Does everything right. Professional, best two-way runner, fantastic leader, loyal. Oh, I just love the bloke. So I'm not huge on him, just given the fact that he's still coming back from injury. But if you've got 520 to 530k, he's the man that I would be selecting. Georgie Hewitt, You look at that 3-round average of 38. Remember, that is sub-affected. Matt Kennedy is out of the side now. I think he'll be out for 5 to 6 weeks. Hewitt did play last week, had a super first half. I think he was on about 60 points. Really slowed up in the second half. But for 259,000, an absolute bargain for what he was able to do last year. I know that has not been what his 2023 has been like, but we know what he can do anyway. If you're desperate, I think you could go there. Jared Witts, I've got the safest houses selection there. 537,500 is an absolute bargain for Jared Witts. Coming up against Big Kizza this week, I think he may teach him a lesson. So if you need a ruckman, if you're a Shrek owner, for example, I think he's a pretty safe get. Mr. Bolton, I actually brought into my side last week. You can see the roller coaster there. Damn, could have been anything against the Eagles. A 40-plus quarter to open up, but just was not accurate. 2 goals for. Pretty unfortunate, but what do? He's going to be a player that will give you maybe a couple of 50s or 60s and then a 150. I took a bit of a gamble there. I'm hoping we see some ceiling games. They've got a couple of nice fixtures to, within the next 6 anyway. And Nick Martin, really disappointing last week against Geelong. Had another failure, I think, a couple of weeks before that, but his last 7, let's just say, have been really, really nice. That 3-rounder is only 88 because he's had 2 pretty poor ones in the last 3, but we all know what their fixture's like. He has probably the best 3 to 4 weeks out of any other team, the Dons. We did do a fixture analysis on the Sword Play Potty, so make sure that you check that out if you are interested. Janeth colour-coded it, did it according to current ladder position. Absolutely fantastic. So I am still a big, big fan of Nick Martin. And best of all, as you can see from the title, he's a real pod. And we'll finish off with some budget DPP options, all under 150k. I think only 3 of these blokes are actually going to get up this week. Ethan Stanley down the bottom, bargain basement price, mid-season recruit, 102,400. It's an absolute rule breaker. He is debuting this week, unfortunately, and I hate this. He is debuting as the sub. So, look, if you're just going for a bargain basement price and you don't need him for a loop, then Stanley, absolutely fine for that. Perez played a decent game last week for his 66. Another Jack in the St Kilda side. Surprise, surprise. Unfortunately, though, has been omitted this week. So he's a pass for me, but may get up as the sub. Not too sure yet. And the 3 blokes up the top have all been named this week. You've got Harvey, Woden and Banks. 2 father sons there. A Brownlow medalist and the league record games holders. So their old man certainly made an impact on the competition. You've got Banksy down there in 3rd position as a defensive forward. So Harvey, 117,300. Played the 2 games, obviously on the bubble. I think job security looks pretty decent for now. His 3-rounder is 45. That is exactly the same as Banks. So if you're looking for a defender, you could go Banksy, or a mid or a forward, you can obviously go Harvey there. And Woden, right in the middle, he's got the best 3-rounder with a 45, 123,900 though. So you are paying up 6k more than someone like a Harvey, but it's really up to you. I'd probably go with a Harvey, even though Woden scored a few more points. Actually watched him live last week, as you know, absolute bloody killer for the Lions, but did kick a really nice goal. So I don't mind either one of these blokes. I suppose whatever floats your boat, but I'd probably again have Cooper Harvey up the top, a good Assumption College boy, and look, I think either way you go with the top 3, you can't really go wrong. So that's it for this week, guys. Remember, if you are interested in joining us for our Community Appreciation Pod, let me know down there in the comments section, or else DM me on Twitter, and we'll definitely organise for you to come on. So all the best with your trade-ins and your trade-outs for this week. If you got any, hopefully avoid the carnage. Good luck, guys. See you soon. Bye.